The wind howled through the cracks in the old ranch house like it had something to say. Maybe it did. Maybe it remembered every broken promise buried beneath that dry Texas dirt. I stood on the porch holding a rusted coffee cup while the sunrise crawled over the empty fields. Half the fence had collapsed years ago. The barn leaned sideways like an old drunk. And the land everyone laughed at? It was all I had left. My name is Walter Grayson. I'm 72 years old, and for 14 years I lived alone on a dying ranch everybody else had abandoned, especially my son, especially his wife. You know what hurts more than losing money? Watching your own child decide you're worthless because you don't have any. My son, Ethan, used to love this place when he was little. He'd run through the fields chasing calves with his cowboy hat too big for his head. He used to sit beside me on the tractor pretending he was driving. Dad, he once told me when he was 7, I'm never leaving the ranch. Funny how fast love changes when money enters the room. After his mother died, things shifted. I was grieving, barely functioning. The ranch had debts stacked higher than hay bales. Drought killed half our cattle. Banks called non-stop, and then Ethan met Vanessa, beautiful woman, sharp smile, cold eyes, the kind of person who walks into a room and silently measures what everyone is worth. At first, she acted sweet around me. Walter, this ranch has charm, she'd say while avoiding touching anything dusty. But charm disappears fast when there's no profit attached. One night, I overheard her talking to Ethan in the kitchen. Shayla and Mark bought a condo in Miami, she said. Your father is sitting on dead land. Dead land, I'll never forget those words. Because she said them while looking directly at the window where I was standing outside. A year later, Ethan stopped helping around the ranch. Then he stopped visiting altogether. Eventually, they moved to Dallas. Before leaving, Ethan sat across from me at this very table. Dad, you should sell. I looked around the kitchen where his mother used to bake peach pie every Sunday. Sell to who? Developers. They offered pennies. It's still more than this place is worth. That sentence hit harder than he realized. Not this place, me. He thought I was worthless. I asked him one question. If your mother were alive, would you still leave? He couldn't answer. Vanessa answered for him. We can't waste our lives here. Waste. That word stayed with me for years. After they left, silence became my roommate. The ranch fell apart slowly. One section at a time. The tractor died first, then the well pump. Then winter storms ripped part of the roof clean off the barn. Nobody came to help. Not Ethan, not Vanessa, not even on Christmas. Do you know what it feels like to eat canned soup alone on Christmas Eve while staring at a dusty family photo? You start wondering if you're already dead and nobody bothered telling you. Years passed. I got older. My hands shook more, my knees cracked louder. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch at night and talk to my late wife, like she was still there. I failed him, Claire, I'd whisper. But deep down, another voice kept answering. No, he failed you. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I almost ignored it because most calls were debt collectors. But this one came from Austin. The woman on the line sounded excited. Mr. Grayson, are you aware your ranch sits directly over one of the largest lithium deposits discovered in Texas? I nearly laughed. Lady, the only thing under this ranch is rock and regret. No, sir. Geological surveys confirmed it this morning. I sat down slowly. My heart started pounding. She continued talking numbers, mining contracts, energy companies, investors, millions, not thousands, millions. I thought it was a scam until 3 black SUVs rolled onto my property 2 days later. Men in expensive boots stepped out carrying maps and documents. One of them said something I'll never forget. Mr. Grayson, this land is now one of the most valuable properties in the state. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I looked across the broken fences, the dead grass, the collapsing barn, the same land my son called worthless. And suddenly, everything changed. News spreads fast when money appears. Faster than wildfire. Within a week, reporters were calling. Neighbors suddenly waved again. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in 20 years somehow found my number. And then Ethan called. The first thing he said after almost 11 months of silence? Dad, Why didn't you tell us? Use. Funny word. I leaned back in my chair. You didn't ask. Long silence. Then came Vanessa's voice in the background. Put me on speaker. Of course, she always needed control. Walter, she said sweetly, we're family. Families celebrate together. Celebrate? Where was that family when I couldn't afford medicine? Where was that family when rain poured through my ceiling? Where was that family when I spent my 70th birthday eating beans alone in the dark because the electricity got shut off? I said quietly. You left. Ethan sighed dramatically. Dad, don't do this. Don't do this. Amazing. The people who abandon you always act offended when you remember it. 3 days later, they showed up at the ranch, not alone. They arrived in a brand new luxury SUV wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my tractor ever did. Vanessa Stout, first wearing sunglasses bigger than her sincerity. Then Ethan came around smiling too hard. You know that fake smile people use when they want something? That one. Vanessa hugged me like we were suddenly close again. Oh my God, Walter. This place brings back memories. Interesting. Because last time she saw the ranch, she called it dead land. They walked around pretending nostalgia had magically returned. Ethan slapped the old barn wall. Man, I miss this place. No, son, you missed the money. Inside the house, Vanessa suddenly became helpful, cleaning counters, owning curtains, talking about renovations. At dinner, Ethan cleared his throat nervously. So, we were thinking. There it was, the real reason they came. We could move back, he said. I stared quietly. Vanessa jumped in fast. We could rebuild the ranch together. Make it a family legacy. Legacy. Now it was a legacy, not a waste, not dead land. Amazing what a few $1 million can do to people's vocabulary. I asked one question. Why now? Silence. Ethan rubbed his neck. You're getting older, Dad. There it was. Not concern, calculation. They thought the old man would die soon. And when I did, they'd inherit paradise. That night, I sat alone on the porch thinking about every lonely year, every ignored call, every holiday spent staring at empty chairs. And I realized something. Money hadn't changed them. It revealed them. The next morning, I drove into town. First stop, a lawyer's office. Best decision of my life. Her name was Margaret Holloway, sharp woman. Didn't waste words. After hearing everything, she folded her hands and asked, "What do you want, Walter?" I looked out the window for a long time before answering. I want peace. Not revenge, not screaming, not drama. Peace. Margaret nodded slowly. Then she helped me build a plan, a real one. Over the next month, construction crews arrived, the ranch transformed piece by piece. New fences, new roofs, fresh paint, modern equipment. The place looked alive again. But something else changed too. Ethan and Vanessa suddenly visited every weekend. Vanessa brought pies she definitely didn't bake herself. Ethan offered to manage investments. One night, I overheard them arguing in the guest room. She needs him to update the will already, Vanessa hissed. My stomach dropped. Ethan whispered back, just be patient. Patient, like vultures circling roadkill. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. Not from anger, from clarity. I finally accepted the truth. They didn't come back because they loved me. They came back because the ranch became valuable. And once you understand someone's true motivation, you stop begging for their love. A week later, I invited them both to dinner. Vanessa looked thrilled. Ethan seemed nervous. The dining room looked beautiful that night. Candles, steak, wine. For the first time in years, the ranch felt warm again. Halfway through dinner, Ethan smiled. So, Dad, have you thought more about the inheritance situation? Straight to business. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin. I have. Vanessa nearly leaned forward out of excitement. I reached beside my chair and pulled out a folder. This, I said calmly, contains my final decision. Ethan grabbed it immediately. Vanessa actually smiled before opening it. Then her face froze. Color drained from Ethan's cheeks. Silence swallowed the room. Finally, Ethan whispered, "What is this?" "A donation agreement." They stared at me. I spoke softly. "The ranch will become a veterans rehabilitation community after I die." Vanessa blinked hard. "What? I signed everything over last week." Ethan looked stunned. You're giving it away? No, I corrected gently. I'm giving it purpose. Vanessa slammed the papers down. This is insane. I stayed calm. No, what's insane is abandoning your father for 14 years and expecting a reward. Ethan stood up suddenly. Dad, no, I interrupted. You don't get to call me Dad only when money appears. That hit him hard. Good some truths should. Vanessa's mask finally cracked completely. You're punishing us. I looked directly into her eyes. No, life already did that. You just haven't realized it yet. Ethan's voice broke. We came back, didn't we? I nodded slowly. Yes, after the land became worth millions. Silence. Heavy silence. Then I said the sentence I'd waited years to say. You loved the ranch the moment it could benefit you. I loved it when it was broken. Nobody spoke after that. Eventually, Vanessa stormed outside. Ethan stayed behind. For the first time in years, he looked small again, like the little boy who used to ride beside me on the tractor, his eyes filled with tears. And quietly, he asked the question that came far too late. Were things really that bad for you? I laughed softly, not because it was funny, because pain changes shape after enough years. You never asked. That shattered him more than yelling ever could. He sat down slowly. I thought you were strong. I was, I said, strong enough to survive without you. Tears rolled down his face, and suddenly I saw it. Real guilt, not performance, not manipulation, actual guilt. He whispered, I'm sorry. Do you know something strange? I had imagined hearing those words for years, thought they'd heal everything. They didn't, because apologies don't erase abandoned birthdays, or empty Christmases, or years of silence. But they matter. They matter because they reveal whether a soul is still alive underneath all the greed. I nodded once. Thank you. Not I forgive you. Not yet. Just thank you. That night, Ethan left alone. Vanessa never came back. Not once. 3 months later, Ethan returned by himself. No expensive clothes, no fake confidence. He helped repair fences without being asked. Me fixed the old tractor, cooked dinner badly. Slowly, awkwardly, we started rebuilding something neither of us knew how to name. Trust takes longer to grow than resentment, but unlike money, it's actually worth something. Last winter, we stood together on the porch during the first snowfall. The ranch glowed under white fields stretching for miles. Ethan looked around quietly. I used to think this place was nothing. I nodded. I know. He swallowed hard. But Mom loved it here, didn't she? I smiled for the first time in a long while. More than anywhere. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he asked softly, Do you think she'd forgive me? I looked at the land everyone once called worthless, the same broken ranch that revealed who truly loved and who only calculated value. And I answered honestly, she'd want you to become someone worth forgiving. The wind moved gently through the fields, not lonely anymore, just peaceful. And for the first time in 14 years, home didn't feel empty. Spring arrived slowly that year, the kind of slow that only happens on old ranches where the land has suffered too long, tiny patches of green pushed through dry soil. Fence posts stood straighter. The barn finally stopped looking like it wanted to collapse every time the wind blew, and Ethan kept showing up every Saturday. No speeches, no excuses, just work. At first, I didn't trust it. Pain makes you suspicious of kindness, even real kindness, especially from the people who once hurt you most. But week after week, he came back, sometimes before sunrise, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just silence. One morning, I found him sitting alone in the old horse stable, staring at a dusty photograph of his mother. He didn't notice me at first. She used to sing in here, he whispered. I leaned against the doorway. Terribly. He laughed quietly, then the laughter disappeared. I forgot her voice. That sentence punched straight through my chest, because that's what happens when people run too fast toward money and status. They accidentally leave pieces of themselves behind. I walked over and handed him the photo. She forgave people too easily, I said. He stared down at the picture. Was she disappointed in me? I answered truthfully. She was heartbroken. Tears filled his eyes instantly. Not dramatic tears, not movie tears. The ugly kind people can't fake. And for the first time since he was a child, My son cried in front of me, not because he lost money, because he finally understood what he destroyed. A month later, the town held a community fundraiser. Funny thing about small towns. They ignore you when you're struggling, then suddenly remember your name when you become successful. People shook my hand nonstop. Investors circled like sharks. Everybody wanted something. Then I overheard two men talking near the barbecue tables. That old man got lucky. Lucky. I almost laughed. People always call it luck after they watch you survive. Years they never could have endured. One of the men noticed Ethan standing beside me. "So you're the heir, huh?" The old Ethan would have smiled proudly. Instead, he answered quietly, "No, I'm just his son." That mattered more to me than he realized. But peace never arrives without one final storm, and ours came wearing expensive heels. Vanessa returned in July. I saw the black SUV pulling down the ranch road from nearly half a mile away. Even from that distance, I recognized the way she drove, fast acrosis, like the world owed her space. Ethan saw it too. His face immediately tightened. She said she wouldn't come back. "Well," I muttered, "greed gets lonely." She stepped out looking flawless as always. Perfect hair, Dawnstar sunglasses. Cold smile. But something was different this time, desperation, the kind people try hiding behind confidence. She hugged Ethan first. He barely reacted, then she turned toward me. Walter. No warmth. No fake sweetness. Just calculation. Interesting, the mask was finally gone. Inside the house, she got straight to the point. "I want to talk business." "Of course you do." Ethan crossed his arms. "There is no business." She ignored him completely and looked at me. "I know about the Veterans Project." I nodded once. "And you're making a mistake." "No," I said calmly. "I already made the mistake years ago." Her jaw tightened. "You're throwing away generational wealth." I looked around the kitchen, at the walls Claire painted herself, at the old clock that still ticked unevenly, at the home she once called a waste. "Funny," I said softly. "You only started calling it generational wealth after it became profitable." That hit her nerve instantly. "You think you're teaching some moral lesson?" she snapped. "This is money, real money. And that's exactly why you came back." Silence, then came the bomb. "I'm filing for divorce." Ethan looked stunned. "What?" She finally turned toward him. "You've changed." He stared at her in disbelief. "No, I finally stopped becoming who you wanted." That line hung in the room like thunder. For the first time ever, Vanessa looked nervous, not angry, not manipulative, nervous, because control was slipping away. She tried one last move. "Ethan, think carefully. You're choosing this ranch over your future." And my son, same boy who once abandoned me chasing luxury, looked her dead in the eyes and answered, "No, I'm choosing my future for the first time." I swear something healed inside me when he said that, not completely. "But enough," Vanessa laughed bitterly. "You'll regret this." Then she walked out. He never chased her. Not even one step. The SUV disappeared down the road in a cloud of dust, and just like that, woman who nearly destroyed our family was gone. A week later, Ethan handed me something unexpected. A check. I frowned. "What's this?" "Money I owe you." I almost pushed it back immediately, but he stopped me. "No," he said firmly. "You paid my college loans after Mom died. I found the records." I stared at him. "You didn't have to." "Yes," he interrupted quietly. "I did." That moment mattered because repayment isn't about money. It's about accountability. And accountability is where real change begins. Summer faded into autumn. The Veterans Project officially began construction on the east side of the ranch. You should have seen the faces of those men arriving. Former soldiers, broken people, people carrying invisible wars inside them. One man named Daniel walked the property with tears in his eyes. "This place feels peaceful," he whispered. Peaceful, that word again. Maybe that's what the ranch was always meant to become. Not wealth, not status, healing. One evening, Ethan and I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed orange across the fields. He suddenly asked, "Did you ever hate me?" The question lingered in the air. I thought carefully before answering. "No." He looked surprised. "I was angry," I admitted. "I was hurt. But hate?" I shook my head slowly. "Hate is exhausting. and I was already too tired surviving. He stared out toward the land quietly. Then he confessed something that broke my heart all over again. Sometimes Vanessa would ask why you never called more. I frowned. I did call. I know, he whispered. I just stopped answering. The honesty hurt. But hidden truth hurts worse. I thought if I stayed away long enough, he continued, I wouldn't feel guilty anymore. I nodded slowly. But guilt doesn't disappear, I said. It waits. He wiped his eyes. I wasted so many years. I looked at him carefully. No, I said gently. You lost them. There's a difference. Because wasted years teach nothing. Lost years teach everything. That winter, snow covered the ranch heavier than it had in decades. The old place looked beautiful, alive. A few days before Christmas, Ethan knocked on my bedroom door holding a dusty cardboard box. I found these in the attic. Inside were dozens of old VHS tapes, family videos, Claire dancing in the kitchen, young Ethan chasing chickens, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. We spent hours watching them together, laughing, crying, remembering. At one point, a younger version of Ethan appeared on screen, hugging my wife tightly, tiny voice, tiny cowboy boots, and he said, I'll always take care of you. The room went silent. Older Ethan covered his mouth, trying not to break, but he did, completely. I became someone she wouldn't recognize, he whispered. I placed my hand on his shoulder. No, I said softly. You became someone lost. He looked at me through tears. And now? I smiled faintly. Now you're finding your way home. On Christmas morning, the ranch wasn't empty anymore. Veterans from the program joined us for breakfast. Laughter filled the house. Coffee brewed nonstop. Boots stomped snow across the floors Claire once cleaned obsessively, and for the first time in 15 years, my silence was gone. That afternoon, Ethan handed me a wrapped gift. Inside was a small wooden sign, hand-carved. It read, Grace on Ranch Home. As Ernity stared at it for a long moment, then I looked at my son. The same boy who once walked away when everything was broken. The same man who came back only after money appeared, but also man who stayed after the money stopped mattering. And maybe that's what redemption really is. Not perfection, not grand speeches, staying even after the illusion disappears. That night, after everyone left, I stood alone on the porch beneath the stars. The ranch stretched endlessly into the darkness, strong again. Not because it became valuable, because the people on it finally understood value. I thought about Claire, about pain, about forgiveness, about how some families don't collapse in one moment. They erode slowly through pride, silence, and greed. But sometimes, if people are willing to suffer the truth, they can rebuild too. Behind me, the screen door opened. Ethan stepped outside holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then quietly, almost like a child again, he asked, Dad, yeah? Do you think this place saved us? I looked across the ranch everyone once abandoned, the broken land that exposed every selfish heart standing on it, and I answered honestly, no. I took a slow sip of coffee. We saved ourselves when we finally stopped running from what we'd done. Snow drifted softly across the fields. Warm light glowed through the ranch windows. And somewhere deep inside me, after years of loneliness, something finally rested.